Friends, sometimes in life, we don't understand why certain people walk away. We wonder why that relationship ended, why that friend turned against us, or why someone we trusted is no longer part of our journey. But let me remind you, when God removes someone from your life, it's not by accident. It's a divine shift. He's not trying to hurt you. He's positioning you for something greater. Trust that He knows what He's doing. What feels like rejection is often His way of protecting and preparing you for the next level of your destiny. Sure. Here's an expanded version of Keynote, 1 in 600 words. There are moments in life when we don't understand why things happen the way they do. We give our best, we love with our whole hearts, and we invest time into relationships that we believe are meant to last. Then, out of nowhere, people leave. A friend stops calling, a relationship ends, a business partnership dissolves, and we're left wondering why. We question ourselves, replay conversations in our minds, and try to figure out what we did wrong. But can I tell you today, when God removes someone from your life, it's not a mistake, it's not an accident. It's divine intervention. God sees the bigger picture. He knows where your life is headed. He knows the people who are meant to walk with you and the ones who are only supposed to be there for a season. The challenge is that we often hold on to people longer than we should. We get comfortable with them. We build our lives around them. And when they leave, it feels like the ground beneath us is shaking. But what if I told you that their exit is part of God's plan? What if I told you that their departure is making room for something better? Think about the story of Abraham and Lot in the Bible. God told Abraham to leave his country and go to a land that He would show him. Abraham obeyed, but he brought his nephew Lot with him. Lot wasn't part of God's instruction, but Abraham took him anyway. Over time, tension grew between their people. Conflict arose. Finally, they had to separate. And the moment Lot left, God gave Abraham a fresh vision. He told him to look around because everything he saw would be his. Isn't that interesting? God didn't reveal the full blessing until Lot was out of the picture. Some people in your life are like Lot. They were meant to be with you for only a season, but if you keep holding on, they will block what God wants to do next. The wrong people can limit your growth. They can keep you from seeing the full vision God has for you. You may not realize it now, but some of the people who walked away were holding you back. They were distracting you. They were keeping you from stepping into your destiny. This is why we have to trust God's plan. If He allowed someone to leave, we have to believe that it was for a purpose. Maybe they couldn't handle where God is taking you. Maybe their chapter in your story had to end so that a new one could begin. Instead of mourning their absence, start thanking God for His divine alignment. I know it's not easy. I know it hurts when people you care about leave, but don't get stuck in what was. Don't waste your energy trying to hold on to something that God is trying to remove. Instead, shift your focus. Trust that if God took them out of your life, it's because they weren't part of your destiny. He is making space for new opportunities, new relationships, and greater blessings. When you release what is not meant for you, you make room for what is. The right people, the right connections, and the right opportunities will show up at the right time. You don't have to chase after them. You don't have to force anything. Just stay in faith, keep moving forward, and believe that God's plan is always greater than your own. So the next time someone walks away, don't see it as a loss. See it as a step forward. You may not understand it now, but one day you will look back and realize that God was removing them for a reason. He was setting you up for something bigger, something better, something beyond what you could have imagined. Stay faithful, stay expectant, and watch how He unfolds His perfect plan in your life. There are moments in life when we face rejection and it stings. A close friend suddenly distances themselves. A relationship you thought would last forever falls apart. Someone you trusted deeply turns their back on you. It's painful and it leaves you wondering, what went wrong? You start questioning yourself. Was it something I said? Was I not good enough? But what if I told you that this rejection wasn't a mistake? What if I told you that God was actually protecting you? God sees what you cannot see. He knows the intentions of people's hearts, even when you don't. You might see the good in them, but God sees the whole picture. He knows their motives. He knows their future. He knows how their presence in your life would affect your destiny. And sometimes, in His infinite wisdom, He removes people before they can harm you. It's easy to get upset when people walk away. It's easy to feel abandoned and discouraged. But if you could see what God was protecting you from, you would be thanking Him instead of crying over them. That person who left you may have been speaking against you behind your back. That friend who betrayed you may have been holding you back from your full potential. That relationship that ended may have been filled with unseen struggles that would have drained your peace, your joy, and your purpose. Rejection is not a curse. It's a blessing in disguise. It may feel like loss, but in reality it's gain. God is making space for something better. Sometimes He has to close a door before He can open a new one. He has to remove the wrong people before He can bring the right ones. And if you spend too much time grieving over who left, you might miss the new opportunities, the new friendships, and the new blessings He is preparing for you. Think about Joseph in the Bible. His own brothers rejected him. They threw him into a pit, sold him into slavery, and left him for dead. Joseph could have been bitter. He could have spent his life resenting those who wronged him, but instead, he trusted that God was working behind the scenes. Years later, Joseph became a ruler in Egypt, and the very brothers who rejected him had to come to him for help. What they meant for harm, God turned for good. The same is true for you. That person who left didn't catch God by surprise. That friend who betrayed you didn't ruin His plan for your life. No, God allowed it for a reason. He knew that their presence was not part of your destiny. And even though it may have hurt at the time, it was necessary for your growth. So instead of holding on to bitterness, release. Instead of asking, why did this happen to me? Start saying, God, I trust you. Because when you trust Him, you will see that every rejection was His way of redirecting you. He was guiding you away from what wasn't meant for you and leading you towards something greater. You may not see it now, but one day you will look back and understand. You will see how that closed door led you to the right one. You will realize that the person who left made room for someone who truly values you. You will recognize that what you thought was lost was actually God's protection over your life. So don't fight what God is removing. Don't beg people to stay when He is trying to move them out of the way. If they were meant to be in your life, they would be. Trust that God knows what He's doing. His plans are always greater than your own, and what He has ahead of you is far better than anything you left behind. Stay in faith and watch how He turns your rejection into redirection, your loss into gain, and your pain into purpose. There are people in your life right now who are not meant to go where God is taking you. They may have been good to you in the past. They may have been supportive, encouraging, and even instrumental in getting you to this point. But just because someone was right for one season doesn't mean they are meant to be part of your future. God has a destiny for you that is too great to be slowed down by distractions. Sometimes the very people we are holding on to are the ones keeping us from stepping into our purpose. It's not that they are bad people. It's just that they are no longer aligned with where God is leading you. Maybe their vision is too small. Maybe they don't have the faith to believe in the dreams God has placed in your heart. Maybe their influence is pulling you away from your calling instead of pushing you toward it. You see, when God calls you higher, not everyone will be willing to climb with you. Some people prefer to stay in comfort, in complacency, in the familiar. And if you're not careful, you will find yourself trying to drag people along who were never meant to go with you. You will spend your time trying to convince them of what God is doing in your life when in reality, they were never meant to see it. Think about Jesus. When He went to heal Jairus' daughter, He only took Peter, James, and John with Him. There were other disciples, other followers, but He knew that only those three were meant to witness the miracle. Why? Because not everyone had the faith to see what He was about to do. If Jesus, the Son of God, had to be selective about who He allowed in certain moments of His journey, how much more should we? Some people are not equipped to handle the next level of your life. If they stayed, they would talk you out of what God is calling you into. They would fill your mind with doubt, discouragement, and negativity. They would keep you trapped in the mindset of the past when God is trying to elevate you into something greater. That's why God will sometimes remove them, not to hurt you, but to free you. It may not make sense at first. You may wonder why a friendship that once felt so strong is suddenly distant, why someone who used to celebrate you now seems indifferent. But don't fight it. Don't force relationships that God is trying to phase out. When people start pulling away, when connections start fading, it's often a sign that God is making space for something better. Imagine if you spent all your time trying to hold on to the wrong people. You'd be so focused on what's behind you that you'd miss the blessings right in front of you. That's why God closes doors. That's why He shifts people out of your life. Because He knows what's coming, and He doesn't want you to be weighed down by relationships that no longer serve His purpose for you. The truth is, the right people will never leave your life. Those who are meant to be part of your destiny will walk with you through every season. You won't have to beg them to stay. You won't have to convince them to believe in you. They will see the calling on your life and encourage you to move forward. So don't be afraid when God starts removing people. It's not rejection, it's refinement. It's Him clearing the way so that nothing and no one can hold you back. Your destiny is too great to be distracted. Keep your eyes forward, trust His plan, and know that what He has ahead of you is greater than anything you leave behind. It's easy to trust God when life is going according to plan, when relationships are strong, when doors are opening, when everything feels secure. We say, God, I trust You. But what about when things don't go the way we expected? What about when someone we love walks away? What about when a friendship suddenly ends, or a relationship we thought would last forever comes to a close? In those moments, the pain is real. The confusion is real. But can I tell you something? God is not asking you to trust the pain. He's asking you to trust the process. God never removes anything from your life without a reason. He doesn't take away to leave you empty. He removes to make room for something greater. The problem is we often get so focused on the loss that we miss the blessing in disguise. We see who left, what didn't work out, and what didn't go as planned, and we allow ourselves to be consumed by disappointment. But if we could see things from God's perspective, we would realize that what feels like a setback is actually a setup. Think about a seed planted in the ground. At first, it looks like nothing is happening. It's buried, unseen, and forgotten. But under the soil, something is shifting. Roots are growing. Strength is being built. And in the right season, that seed will break through the ground and flourish. The same is true for you. What looks like a season of loss is actually a season of preparation. What feels like rejection is actually redirection. God is growing you, strengthening you, and getting you ready for the next level. The problem is, we don't always see it that way. When a person walks away, we assume something is wrong. We beg for answers. We replay conversations in our minds trying to understand what went wrong. But sometimes God removes people from your life not because they are bad, but because their part in your story is over. If you keep trying to hold on to something that God is trying to remove, you'll only delay the blessings He has in store for you. Look at the story of Job. He lost everything, his wealth, his health, his friends, even his family. He didn't understand why. He could have turned bitter, but instead he chose to trust God. He didn't see the restoration coming, but God had a plan. In the end, Job was blessed with twice as much as he had before. If Job had focused on the pain, he would have missed the process. But because he kept his faith, he saw God's hand at work in ways he never could have imagined. The same is true in your life. Right now, you may not understand why certain people left. You may not see why things had to change. But don't trust the pain. Trust the process. Trust that God knows what He's doing. He is not punishing you. He is preparing you. He is taking you through a season of pruning so that you can bear greater fruit. If you stay stuck in disappointment, you'll miss what's ahead. If you keep looking back, you won't be able to move forward. Let go of what didn't work out. Release the people who walked away. Stop trying to figure out why and start saying, God, I trust You. Because when you trust Him, you give Him permission to do what only He can do. One day you will look back and realize why that person had to leave. You will understand why the relationship didn't work out. You will see that every disappointment was actually a step toward your destiny. So don't get stuck in the pain. Trust that God is working all things together for your good. The process may not always be easy, but the promise is worth it. Keep moving forward, keep trusting, and watch how God turns your loss into a victory. When God starts removing people from your life, it's not to harm you, it's to prepare you for something greater. You may not see it now, but every shift, every closed door, and every unexpected goodbye is part of a bigger plan. God is taking you somewhere new, somewhere higher, and in order to get there, some people can't go with you. It's natural to feel hurt when someone leaves. Maybe it was a friend you trusted, a relationship you invested in, or a connection you thought was permanent. But God sees the future. He knows who will strengthen you and who will hinder you. He knows who will encourage your faith and who will sow doubt. And sometimes He has to allow a separation in order to position you for what's next. Think about a rocket launching into space. At different stages of the journey, parts of the rocket detach and fall away. If those pieces stayed attached too long, they would weigh the rocket down and prevent it from reaching its full potential. The same is true in your life. Some people were meant to be with you for a certain stage, but if they stayed beyond their season, they would only hold you back. God is not just taking things away, He's making room. Making room for new relationships, new opportunities, new levels of favor. If you're holding on to the past, you might miss what He's trying to bring into your future. That's why it's so important to trust Him, even when it doesn't make sense. What feels like loss is actually gain. What looks like a setback is really a setup. Joseph in the Bible experienced this firsthand. He was betrayed by his own brothers, thrown into a pit and sold into slavery. He could have been bitter. He could have asked, God, why did you let them do this to me? But what he didn't realize was that their betrayal was part of God's plan. If Joseph had stayed in his father's house, he would have never reached the palace. The people who betrayed him actually positioned him for his destiny. The same is happening in your life. That person who walked away, it wasn't an accident. That relationship that ended, it wasn't a coincidence. God allowed it because He has something better ahead. If they were meant to be part of your future, they would still be here. Their absence is proof that their role in your story is complete. So instead of mourning what you lost, start thanking God for what's coming. Instead of dwelling on who left, get excited about who's about to enter your life. God is preparing you for greater relationships, deeper connections, and bigger blessings. But in order to step into that, you have to let go of what's behind. The enemy wants you to believe that you've been abandoned, that you're alone, that you'll never find people who truly care about you, but that's a lie. God is not taking from you, He's leading you. Every removal is part of His perfect plan. He is setting you up for something you can't even imagine. So don't get discouraged when people leave. Don't waste your energy trying to hold on to what God is trying to remove. Instead, lift your head, walk in faith, and trust that He is guiding you to something better. One day you'll look back and see that every loss was actually a blessing. Every goodbye was making space for the new. And what God has ahead of you is far greater than anything you left behind.